Hey Team Bio, welcome to your screencast on evolution and some misconceptions around evolution. We're talking about ecology and the diversity of life, and evolution helps explain this vast, beautiful diversity of living things that we have. But there are actually a lot of misconceptions around evolution, how it works, and what level it's working on. So, to start off, here are some necessary conditions for evolution. We have to have variation. And that variation has to be heritable. Let me give you an example of this. If we have a distribution of sizes amongst a population of mice, if that variation, if those sizes are entirely due to the environment, what the mice is eating, then the mice are eating, then that variation cannot be passed on from one generation to the next, and evolution can't act on it. So variation has to be encoded within the DNA in order for evolution to act on it. The second condition is that there has to be overproduction of offspring. And kind of coming off of that idea is that there's some sort of competition for scarce resources. All of this leads to the idea that individuals that are well suited to a certain set of environmental conditions tend to survive and reproduce. So we see individuals that are well suited to their environment because their ancestors were able to survive better and reproduce more frequently because of that, because of those characteristics. So individuals that are well suited to environment tend to survive and reproduce. And this is key. This reproduction idea is really what is causing evolution. If there's a characteristic that's really advantageous, but it doesn't lead you to leave behind more offspring, then the population will not start to look more like you. Okay. Before we dive into an example of a population evolving, I want to define two things that are often misunderstood. Genes and alleles. When we speak of genes in a common kind of everyday parlance, we're actually talking about alleles. A gene is a location on a chromosome. A chromosome is a long strand of DNA that has many genes, and humans on average have 46 chromosomes. Some people have more, some people have less, but the vast majority of us have 46 chromosomes. An allele is a gene variant, a specific sequence of DNA at a gene. Gene variant. Specific DNA sequence. We often talk about people having different genes, which gives us our different characteristics, but this is actually not true. We all have different alleles. So individuals of the same species, same genes. So species share genes, but have different alleles. And these different alleles give us our different variation that we see. Okay, so let's dive into an example here. Imagine we have a population of mice. They all have a coat color gene, but there are two alleles of that gene. There's the B variant and the A variant of the coat color gene. The B allele gives mice a brown coat, and a yellow allele gives mice an A allele gives mice a yellow coat. Okay, so and let's say these mice live both in a area that has grasses and forests. And the mice that are brown are better suited to the forest environment, and the mice that are yellow are better suited to the field environment. Okay, in generation 1, there is an equal distribution of A and B alleles amongst the population, and our expectation is, if the population is not evolving with respect to the coat color gene, that in generation 2, we will see the same frequencies of alleles as generation 1. And in fact, we see this. There's no evolution here. Evolution is measured by the frequencies of alleles from one generation to the next. So if there are equal frequencies of A and B alleles in generation 1 as generation 2, then evolution is not occurring here with respect to this coat color. Okay, but now imagine we have a situation where we get a bunch of rain and the forest starts to grow and the grassy areas start to shrink. Now we see a situation in which the B alleled mice actually have an advantage, a survival and reproductive advantage over the A alleled mice. And so the population starts to evolve. This is not because any mouse that was A coat color changed into a B coat color. It was just that these Bs were able to survive better and reproduce more than these As. And so our population evolves with respect to the coat color gene because the Bs are more fit. They leave behind more offspring. Okay, but also notice that we have this evolution of the mouse population because of changing environmental conditions makes B more successful than A. No single A changed into a B or vice versa. B's just left behind more offspring. However, notice what's happening here. We have a C. A C mouse is a black-coated mouse. And this coat color allele didn't occur because the mice population needed it, because it turns out that C is actually better suited to the forest conditions than B alleles are. The mutation didn't occur because the mice population needed it. It occurred randomly. This was the result of random mutation. Maybe if we had an environmental condition where the grassland was growing and the A mice were becoming more and more frequent within our population, this C allele mouse wouldn't even be able to be reproduced. But because of our changing environmental conditions, now this random mutation has created a coat color that's actually even better for the environmental conditions than the B coat color. So this C mouse is extraordinarily successful and leaves behind a bunch of offspring. This is another example of the population evolving. It evolved from here to here, not because B mice turned into a C mouse or an A mice turned into a C mouse. This C mouse was just the result of a random mutation either in the egg or sperm of an A or B mouse that created a new coat color. Okay, so this leaves us with some takeaways. Number 1, individuals do not evolve. Populations evolve. Variation is the result of random mutation. evolution can only act on existing variation. And let me explain that piece just a little bit more. Imagine there was a D mouse here that had a green coat. And this green coat was actually the very best for surviving in a forest type environment. Well, in the next generation, we'd expect to see a lot of green coated mice with the D allele. However, and maybe this is the fittest, the most advantageous, the best possible coat color to have. But if this coat color doesn't exist in nature, if this random mutation hasn't happened to create this green colored coated mouse, then evolution can't act on it. And we will not see a population evolving towards a green coat color because evolution can only act on existing variation. So evolution acts only on the variation that already exists. Okay, and that's kind of our last takeaway here. Yeah, that's all. Okay, so I hope you know the conditions for evolution, the difference between a gene and an allele, this idea that all species share the same genes, but we have different variations of those genes, different alleles, and that evolution doesn't act on the level of an individual. Individuals cannot evolve. We're all dealt a certain genetic hand at birth, and that's what we have. Instead, populations evolve. Gene frequencies evolve over time. And it is those individuals that are the best suited to their environment that have the ability to survive and, more importantly, reproduce. That leads to evolution over time. But evolution can only exist on existing variation, or it can only act on existing variation, and variation is the result of random mutation. Evolution is not working in a specific direction or towards a specific goal. It's just the best characteristics are selected for across all the characteristics that exist. Okay, that is all.